What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2. And well, as y'all know, it is Wednesday, which means the new summit is now live. I really do feel like time is honestly going insanely fast, but the 70's Racing Glory is going to have a pretty awesome vehicle. But do not worry though, it's not going to be nearly as insane as the So French Summit, which I do think is going to be a good thing considering how intense that summit actually was. But 70's Racing Glory, guys, is going to have a pretty awesome looking Porsche, which is indeed going to be another touring vehicle on the game here. I actually think this is going to be pretty awesome considering the Porsches are pretty dang good. I really cannot wait to actually test that one out. But moving over to the next summit, the agency is going to have a pretty interesting looking tire, which I do think the agency tire is going to fit the name of the summit considering it's the exact same thing. But we also have the legendary half set, which if I had to guess, I would say a lot of players are most likely not the biggest fan of the monster trucks. I for one definitely cannot blame you on that for that matter, but if you guys do want to get on and get this nitro chemist set, I would highly recommend it. I really do think the nitro chemist on the monster trucks is actually insanely good for events, and they really do seem to be showing up in summits pretty often. But jumping right into this one here, guys, we're going to have two of these stunt races in this, which we haven't seen in a while. We're also going to have a drift event there, which looks like it's actually going to be a street race. So I know I was joking about this a while back, but it does seem like we will have to use a drift car in one of these street events. I really cannot wait to actually do that. Then we will also have a demolition derby event, which if I had to guess is most likely going to be an actual demolition derby. I would probably prefer a race, but that's most likely not going to happen. But moving over to the next summit, which is going to be Brawn vs. Beauty, having that really nice Ford GT on the cover. But the highlight of this summit, guys, is 100% going to be that Ferrari F12 TDF. I still really do not know why they actually have that cover image on there, but this is definitely going to be one of those cars you guys will want to go after. I really do like the F12 a lot, and to see this thing coming back in the summit, I really do think is going to make a lot of players happy. But in gold, we will have the Ford Mustang GT Rallycross Edition, which I would say a lot of players most likely already own. And then finally in silver, we will have a legendary half set boosted for the motocross bikes, which if I had to guess is honestly a pretty decent perk setup. Considering we're also getting the EXC the previous week, I do think this is actually pretty dang good. But overall, guys, I can't wait to see what they're also going to do in episode 2. And to see this F12 TDF return is definitely going to be pretty interesting. And now moving right over to the summit here, guys, so I would say this one's going to be on the interesting side. For one, the Firebird race is probably going to be kind of annoying for some. I also found the touring car race over here to be pretty interesting, but overall I would say the summit is going to be pretty dang fun, except for a couple of events I do think are going to throw some players off. But nonetheless though, moving over to the aerobatic skill to start this off, guys, I would say is going to be pretty dang simple. The Zivko Edge really does make these very easy to do, and if you guys are running a score breaker set on these planes, you can easily get yourself well over 145,000 points. But moving over to the next skill is going to be a slalom. I would probably say with this being in the LA River that probably using a rally raid vehicle is going to be your best bet. I actually decided to run one of the hypercars on this one instead of like one of the rally raid vehicles, which I would definitely say is probably going to be the better choice here. But even running the Regera, guys, I basically scored almost exactly the same as the rally raid truck, so you really can basically run any vehicles on these slaloms. And then moving over to the last skill though is going to be an escape, and for this one I actually decided to run the Corvette Stingray. I'm not gonna lie, guys, this run was honestly pretty terrible. I could have easily gotten a lot farther on this one, but do keep in mind though, you don't have to go like 100,000 yards to get 155k and or like 157k, which is going to be the maxed out score. And you can also use a hypercar if you would like to. I personally ran the Stingray Corvette on this because it was pretty simple. I actually ended up running the exact same build and or part set on this drag race as well, which I'm sure a lot of players are not going to be shocked seeing the Stingray in this, considering it's basically the only drag car we actually see now, with an occasional random car thrown in there as well. But overall, guys, the Corvette's definitely going to be the best option for this drag race. And now moving over to the first event though is going to be a forced vehicle for a touring car event. You will be able to test drive the new Porsche 935 in this event, but do keep in mind guys, similar to other summits though, it's going to be base level with no pro settings. I honestly cannot wait to throw the proper pro settings plus a nitro chemist set on this vehicle. Definitely stay tuned later on in the coming weeks for this car as well. I cannot wait to actually test this vehicle out because it does have some pretty dang good overall performance, especially for being stock for that matter. But moving over to this next touring car event guys, you will be able to use the Ferrari 365. And with the touring car update, I really do feel like a lot of these cars are going to be so much more fun to use, and the 365 really does actually seem to be pretty dang decent, especially going around some of the tight corners in these USST races. Overall though guys, I really cannot wait to actually try out some more of these touring vehicles, because the handling update that was part of Season 8 Episode 1 was honestly incredible. But moving over to the next event guys, I would probably say is going to be one of the most annoying events in this entire summit. You will have to use the Pontiac Firebird on downtown LA East, which is definitely not going to be the kind of vehicle you're gonna want to use on this race. Overall, I would say the biggest thing is don't try to slide around the corners. I notice if you guys do try to slide around many of the corners, which in some aspect you would think is actually going to be faster, but what I have noticed guys from testing out this car on some of these corners, sliding around them is definitely going to slow you down. So one of the biggest things I notice is you guys will be able to maintain speed a lot easier if you don't actually slide, which is kind of going to be a challenge with the Firebird, but luckily guys, I do think my settings are pretty dang decent on this car, and it's going to allow you to actually get around the corner just a tad faster. But now moving over to the next event is going to be a no restriction street race, and it's definitely going to be a nice change of pace compared to the previous event. For this one guys, I once again use the Porsche 911 Carrera 4S. If you guys do take a look at the leaderboard, you're most likely going to notice what car is basically taking over. I honestly haven't driven this car in a summit in an insanely long time, and I'm most likely not going to start now, but my goodness, that Countach is honestly insane. I would recommend trying out the Porsche 911 Carrera 4S though. I still would consider this car to be on the underrated side, mainly because it's going to be insanely good, but I just do not see that many people running it. That could also come down to the way this car is going to be geared with it being an 8-speed. If you guys are running manual, it's probably going to be a bit wonky to run, but luckily it's still going to be insanely good, and it can easily compete in some of these races versus something like the Countach. And now moving over to the final event is probably going to be one of the weirdest races we have ever seen. A touring car vehicle being used on a rallycross event. Do not worry though guys, it's not going to be on one of the tracks where you have to jump. I really do feel like that would probably be an absolute nightmare. This is going to be stage 6 though, so there's going to be some off-roading involved. And the 911 Carrera RSR Turbo is definitely not going to be a fan of off-roading. This is also going to be the case with most of the touring cars in the game though. So if you guys are off-roading and you're trying to hit the gas pretty hard, I would recommend being slightly careful because the car can easily spin out. I honestly wasn't driving the greatest in this event either, but I was like, you know what, if I could still get around 5 minutes and 30 seconds, I can probably get a decent score. I could most likely jump on this one and do slightly better, but I really do feel like, guys, you don't have to be perfect on these events to actually get in platinum, and I really do want to show players that as well. But overall, I would say the 911 Carrera is not going to be a terrible car, at least if you actually keep this thing on the road for that matter. But if you do drive this thing in some off-roading, my goodness, it's probably going to be pretty dang awful. But even with this summit having some annoying events like the Firebird street race and or trying to off-road a touring car, I would say a lot of players are most likely going to like this summit. I did find this one pretty dang fun to do, plus we're getting closer to that TDF as well. Overall though guys, let me know in the comments below if you have any questions at all. Let's jump right into this.
Okay. you